When it comes to nonfiction, we should make one important differentiation: fact versus opinion. Both are present in nonfiction. Facts are the details of what happened, and opinions are the conclusions drawn from those facts. The idea is that facts are true. For example, your dog wags its tail when you come home from school. Your conclusion could be, the dog likes me. This may or may not be true. What if the dog doesn't like you but is excited for the usual treat you give them when you get home from school? In this example, we had the same fact, but two possible conclusions. Conclusions are a form of opinion. Preferences are another form of opinion. They are quite obvious. For example, I love dogs. That's quite clearly an opinion. However, not all opinions are easy to see. To quote Star Trek, villains who twirl their mustaches are easy to spot, but those clothe themselves in good deeds are well camouflaged. And so it is also with opinions, especially opinions in the news. Fake news consists of untrue conclusions, well camouflaged by very selective or false facts and a fancy veneer. A hotbed of fake news is conspiracy theorists. You've probably heard of the term. It's a very old genre and usually changes with the times. However, conspiracy theories are often based on the same basic premise. Something big and powerful out there is trying to take us over. It feeds on a fear inside of us, a fear of the unknown, a fear of the powerful. It's almost like a fear of God, but God has just been replaced with some other big random thing. It might be the Illuminati or the Bilderberg Group, aliens, the American deep state, or, in a conspiracy theory example that's in the current news, the crazy idea that 5G is responsible for corona.
Viruses are simply excretions of a toxic cell.
That's Thomas Cowan, an American holistic doctor.
They bud out from the cell. They happen when the cell is poisoned. They are not the cause of anything.
In this video that's been shared thousands of times around the world in 5 different languages, Cowan claims a virus isn't behind the pandemic. 5G wireless networks are.
Anybody want to make one guess as to where the first completely blanketed 5G city in the world was? Exactly.
That's not true. Some U.S. cities and South Korea had 5G networks long before Wuhan. And 5G is a long way from being up and running around the world. But the video gained traction. Last week, it was shared by American singer Carrie Hilson to her more than 2 million Instagram followers.
It's actually been something that the anti-vax community has used fairly frequently as part of their argument against vaccination.
University of Manitoba virologist Jason Kindrechuk has heard this 5G poisoning idea before. Kindrechuk says scientists have sequenced COVID-19. They've taken it apart and put it back together again. They've infected primates with it who then exhibited symptoms.
I think the data is so overwhelmingly valid and validated to show that the viruses cause disease. It's almost difficult for me to argue why.
As for Thomas Cowan, he's currently on probation with the California State Medical Board and operating with restrictions on his practice after a 2017 complaint about another matter. Cowan has authored a book that argues against vaccinating children. He did not respond to CBC News' request for comment about the video.
So, no, staying away from 5G networks, which we don't really have up and running in Canada yet, won't keep you safe from COVID-19. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
It's clear that some people don't trust the CBC and other news media on this topic, but it gets worse in the case of 5G. Aside from putting their crazy ideas all over the internet, in recent weeks, 5G corona conspiracy has led to telephone towers being lit on fire in the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. In the Netherlands, there have been 17 towers set on fire in the past 2 weeks.
So the 5G story is complete and utter rubbish. It's nonsense. It's the worst kind of fake news. The reality is that the mobile phone networks are absolutely critical to all of us, particularly in a time when we are asking people to stay at home and to not see relatives and friends. But in particular, those are also the phone networks that are used by our emergency services and our health workers. And I'm absolutely outraged, absolutely disgusted that people would be taking action against the very infrastructure that we need to respond to this health emergency. It is absolute and utter rubbish, and I can't condemn it in stronger terms than that.
This is worrisome when a tower is broken because people might not have any connection on their phones. Now, if you're new to this topic, a brief technical explanation from Linus Tech Tips might help you on understanding 5G.
The fact that 5G travels over higher frequency radio waves has led to speculation that it might be riskier to use than older generation wireless standards. So how much truth is there to this, and why are people concerned in the first place? Well, to start with, 5G uses what's often called millimeter wave frequencies, which are shorter than the typical frequencies used by 4G and Wi-Fi signals, and therefore higher in energy. In fact, while LTE can use frequencies of around 2.5 gigahertz, and Wi-Fi often works on the 5 gigahertz band, millimeter wave frequencies used by 5G can be up to 300 gigahertz. So we're not talking about like a small incremental leap here. Anyway, the reason that we have nothing to fear from 5G is that radiation has to be much higher frequency to be what's called ionizing. Ionizing radiation can mess with the molecular structure of your DNA and cause cancer. The thing is, the threshold for this is around 1 million gigahertz, much higher than the 300 or so that can be used by 5G. And at that point, you're not even dealing with radio waves anymore. You're dealing with ultraviolet light, which is why sunscreen bottles talk about UV protection on the label.
This is a good explanation of the basics of 5G. When we listen to non-fiction information, we have to be aware of what is fact and what is opinion. In this case, the conclusion that 5G is or is not dangerous are both conclusions based on facts. But when a certain opinion has been fairly conclusively proven, we also consider that conclusion a fact. For example, we say that gravity is a fact on Earth, even though gravity comes from a conclusion based on objects falling and mathematical analysis. For 5G, the facts in support of its harm are fairly slim, but 5G Corona videos get a lot of views on YouTube. This means that many people fall for this kind of stuff. And that's because the conclusions about 5G's harm are stated as facts, such as it causes corona. Opinions are masquerading as facts, but with a little bit of common sense, we can learn to see through them. Which takes me to your assignment today. Your task is in 10.1 on Google Classroom, where you'll get 3 documents in which you have to differentiate fact from opinion. And on that high note, let's bring our discussion on conspiracy theories to a close. The reality is that all these facts and opinions can be scary sometimes. I used to know someone who would watch conspiracy theories all the time and became depressed through them. Unlucky for him, there was an endless stream on YouTube. Maybe you've come across some of them too. But it's a good thing we do have a choice not to watch them. It's easy to fear, but it's more important not to. We are humans, which means we can choose to hope and believe. And as we grow up, let us not become cynical. Let us grow in love and optimism instead.